All right, crew, we're back. Welcome back to Well Said. If you haven't found this out yet, I changed my handle on Instagram to Well Said Sid as well. So if you're looking for me and you're like, where's Candid Sid? Well, guess what? You now have the name. Okay. So find me over there. I'm very excited for the conversation I'm about to have with you today. And I have a special guest here and I'll introduce her in a second, but I want to tell you what we're going to talk about first. We're going to talk about love languages, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you find out. Not only that, we're going to talk about the different elements of therapy, relationship therapy, the different styles of therapy. We'll also talk about what type to use and what Renee, sorry, I spilled the beans a little bit of who it is, attachment styles versus attachment strategies in relationships. I have a ton of write-ins. I'm going to talk to specific situations that I felt were coming in that were repeated, attachment needs, relationship bonds. And if you don't know what that is, you better stay and figure it out. And then I'm going to help you guys. And we're going to do 5 Call Sid segments in this episode. A lot. Okay. So very advice heavy, very situation heavy. And I think you're going to like it a lot. So without further ado, Renee, do you mind introducing yourself to everybody? Because you are just like world renowned with all your credentials. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to remember them all.
That's okay. First of all, I want to just thank you for having me on the podcast.
Oh my God,
I'm
of course.
excited.
And if people are like, wait a minute, I recognize this voice. Renee was on the podcast when it was Straight Candid. She came to the studio. She's been here. It looked a little different then.
It looked a little different. It was in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
Now we're in the winter. And I think it was a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, maybe.
I want to say it was, a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago. All right. So I'm Renee Segal and I own Evolve Therapy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified emotionally focused therapist and supervisor. So that's what I do. My office is in Plymouth. It's really on the corner of Golden Valley, Minnetonka, St. Louis Park.
For my MN people.
For Minnesota people, right. And so, I'm excited to be back and I'm excited to talk about this topic.
One of Renee's videos went like viral because of the conversations of how strong our conversations were. The thing about this episode, we talked through it. We literally took 45 minutes before this to make sure we had everything we wanted and how we wanted to organize it. But everyone can learn something from this. Right. Everyone can learn something not only from their past, about their current relationship, about how they show up in relationships. And we don't have time to talk about like how you show up at work versus how you show up here. I would eventually like to talk about that, but this is going to be so helpful whether you are just coming out of a relationship, whether you're in a relationship, you have been for a long time. I cannot wait to talk to you. So why don't we do this? I want to do one Call Sid in the beginning, and then we're going to dive into all the other topics. So first Call Sid of the day, it says, moving states and moving in with a significant other. Am I crazy for being scared to move states to move in with my boyfriend? My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 years and we've been talking about moving in together. We've been long distance for the majority of our relationship and we see each other often and basically live together when we do visit one another. The thought of taking things a step together is really exciting because it's a chance for growth, but it also feels a little bittersweet that I'd be leaving my life, my friends, and my family in Wisconsin to move to Minnesota. I went to college in Minnesota, so I do have friends there and I know and love the cities, but I feel a little daunting with this idea. I'm scared that it will feel like I've lost my identity and I'm scared I'll be lonely without my people. It's been weighing heavy on me and I'm not sure if the anxiety is just because uprooting feels vulnerable and it's new territory for us or if there's more there to think about. I honestly think he's the one, which is why I think it's messing with my head so much. I'm scared that moving now means that I'm leaving and never coming back, even though I know that sounds dramatic. Please help.
Wow. This sounds like this is a really important topic and it can create a lot of anxiety for anybody to move. And it sounds like she's moving and leaving everybody.
I know.
And so what she needs is to make sure that her partner is really strong and really there for her. And in terms of advice, because I don't know the whole situation, it's hard to give some advice. But what I would say is it would be interesting for her to give it a chance for 3 months and then see how she feels. But has she told her partner how anxious she is?
And I'd be curious.
I think that we need to know because there's so much here. But what's really great about it is, and we're going to be talking about this later, is her attachment lives with her people in Wisconsin.
Oh,
she's got this whole family there and she's going to leave it all and put all of her eggs in one basket with him.
Right.
And so it's it's tricky business.
It is very tricky.
It's complicated.
It'd be hard. I mean, I've moved for somebody before, and I'm not going to lie, it backfired. So I'm just going to put that out there and say it. I wouldn't say it always does.
Yeah.
We looked at this one before just very briefly, and we were talking about, well, you kind of just have to try. If you really think he's the one, and you need to see if, and put all your eggs in one basket, but like test it out. Maybe it is saying, I'm going to come for 3 months. That's it.
Right.
And we're just going to see, and I'm going to work remote, and I'm not going to change and uproot my whole life, but I'm going to pack a pretty hefty bag, and let's just try it out. But either way, you kind of got to go and see.
Right. You've got to, and I think the other thing is I would want her to talk to her partner about all of her anxieties and really to get really specific about what she's so afraid of so that he can be there for her and assure her that like, okay, I got you and I got your back. So she's not going to feel so alone in this. Because it sounds like and I like your idea of like work remote for a little bit. Don't uproot your job and stuff.
Don't change everything all at once, because no wonder it feels so daunting and scary. And moving does feel scary. Like it is daunting. It is a change, and change does feel uncomfortable. So that's true. Mm-hmm. I would just be careful to make sure that he really is someone you can lean on, because you are removing yourself from all the people you do lean on. Mm-hmm. Are you willing and wanting to make new friends? Like that was my big question, is like, am I in a phase of life that I want to make new friends? Because honestly, right now in my current life, I'm not really in the mood to make new friends. Like I don't feel like going out to the bars and being like, hey, not really my vibe right now.
Yeah.
Different stage.
Right.
So good luck with that. I would say temporarily go stay. Talk with your partner, please, for the love of God, communicate and be honest. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a you situation where you've got to go test it out. But before you do that, have the conversation with them and make sure they know how anxious you're feeling.
Right. So that they can be there. Yeah. So that they can be there, and how responsive that partner is going to be to you.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a little touch of what we're going to get into. So I don't know about you, but I think we just dive right into it. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's just jump right into love languages.
Okay. The love languages.
Well, I would just like to start with, I asked my listeners, what is your love language? Yeah. So I said that on my story on my Instagram. If you ever don't know where I'm asking people, it's on Instagram always. I always use my stories to ask listeners. And so when I read through this, I saw quality time and words of affirmation were probably 95% of you, like astronomically heavy. A lot of you were females that wrote in. A little bit of the male mix was in there, but then that's when I was seeing different love languages. Mm-hmm. When I asked listeners, what are your partner's love languages or love language? Okay, so I asked majority females what their majority male or female partner's love languages were. I saw physical touch and acts of service. And what percentage, you ask? 95%. Mm-hmm. Please talk to me about this.
Okay, well, so can I just jump into the love languages?
You can jump in wherever you want to jump in.
Okay, so the kind of therapy that I do is emotionally focused therapy, which is much deeper than the love languages. The love languages were written by Gary Chapman. He is a fundamentalist Christian. It came out in the 1990s.
Oh, so not that long ago.
In the 1990s. No, I think 92, 95, something like this. And so every now and then what we have is like some of this Christian fundamentalist literature gets into the mainstream popular media. Purpose-driven life is another example of this. I don't think that people really understand. So there's 5 love languages. I think we should just tell people.
We should name them off.
Yeah, we should name them. Quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, physical touch, and gifts. Mm-hmm. And those are the 5 love languages. People love it because it's simple, but it's not... It takes the complexity of human relationships and boils it down into something, and it's much deeper. It's much more about attachment, which I'll explain in a second.
Yeah.
So all of us therapists, when people are like, you're not speaking my love languages, because people weaponize them. And so they're like, but I also want to say that Gary Chapman was like, if your partner says they want physical touch, you need to just give it to them. And so he was very sexist. And so I think that, and it's heteronormative.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you would mention that.
Yeah, it's like heteronormative, and it doesn't take into account any kinds of non-traditional relationships.
Right.
And so I think it misses the point of attachment. And so I don't know, is it okay if I talk about attachment?
Absolutely. I was just going to say
Yeah.
that. So basically you're saying that they were created by somebody who was very much in a heteronormative relationship, was very much the powerhouse of the relationship. So he's saying when your partner needs this, you just give it to them because that's your job as a female.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's sadly, what Christian, what is it called? Fundamentalism is like, that's the basis of it because it is in a male world. And, you know, obviously this is what Renee has researched. Like this is not just coming out of anywhere. Like it's all research based. So just understand that it's not a bad thing if you're trying to understand love languages in order to support your relationship. But that's why I want you to talk about the way that you therapy or
do therapy or whatever the type of model we use. Well, first of all, they have there's no research evidence around the love languages. Zero. None. And so the kind of therapy that I do, which is emotionally focused therapy, is research-based. There's over 300 outcome studies. And in 70% of the cases, people get better. If they've gone through a bonding moment with their partner, 90% of the cases, and they'll look at people 5 years later once they've been through therapy and it sticks.
What's a bonding moment?
Like, which I'll talk about in a second.
Sorry.
Okay.
I love this stuff. So
I know.
I'm like,
I know.
Tell me.
What is this? So the type of therapy that is, one of the elements of emotionally focused therapy is it's based on attachment. And so I'm going to give you a brief summary of attachment.
Okay.
So attachment, it started by this man. He's from England. His name is John Bowlby. He's the father of attachment theory. So what happened? He was a really sweet man. This is why we parents, when a child is sick in the hospital, why we, parents go and stay with them when they're in the hospital, because I'll tell you that in a second. We don't want to end up with like Ted Bundy, who's had broken attachment.
Yes.
So what happens is babies are born completely helpless. And I have to say I'm a new grandma. So I'm
congrats.
like, yes. And so,
that's so exciting.
They're born completely helpless. They can't keep themselves warm. They can't feed themselves. They can't keep themselves clean. They can't protect themselves from predators. We need someone to take care of us. And if you look at an elephant is born and can get up and walk away.
Yeah, true.
And they can, and that's a big mammal. Human babies, because we have this big head, we come through this tiny little pelvis. So we have to do a lot of our growth outside the womb. So it's wired into us for the survival of our species to be dependent on a caregiver. Well, that caregiver has to fall in love with you in order to take care of you. And so our process of growth is 18 years, until you can really
completely,
and my grandson is like 5 months old and he's barely able to move where he wants to go right now. And he doesn't even have control of his arms and things like that. So eventually what happens is we have this bond with our parents and we give and receive love that way. And then as we get into adolescence, what happens is we develop the hormones of adolescence switch it to partners. And so the same bond between mother and child and father and child is the same bond that we have with our partners. And so we develop strategies to get and to receive love. So you can have, there's different strategies. You can be secure.
Okay.
You can be that's what we're going for is you can be secure, you can be insecure, and you can be anxiously attached or avoidantly attached, or you can be disorganized.
Okay,
and that
so
means there's four
technically.
Well, I think there's. Oh my goodness, I'm not thinking secure. There's and then the two insecure types.
Oh, they're kind of together.
Yeah, they're and there's four. And then there's this disorganized attachment, which is kind of like, come here, go away, that sort of a thing. So you can see, generally speaking, if a parent meets your needs, child cries and the parent is there, it's really not that they have to be there all the time. It's about how they repair.
Okay.
It's about like, oh, you've missed my need. And then they've repaired and then they're good.
Okay.
But if you're the child of a depressed parent and you cry and cry and cry and your parent isn't there, you learn that your crying doesn't do any good. So you have ways to do that. You can just kind of shut it down, or you can cry and become really anxious. And so it depends on, and there's lots of things lots of ways that we cope with these different strategies. What this does is it comes into adult relationships because it's like how we learn to give and receive love. And so nobody gets through life without having some kind of injuries, right? And so we all bring these adult attachment strategies with us from childhood. And I say strategies because sometimes you can be secure with some people and insecure with others.
So it depends on the person.
It depends on the person and the relationship. So sometimes it's a strategy that you use to give and receive love. So this is part of what, and that's part of what emotionally focused therapy is based on. And then what happens is we get into these negative cycles of behavior where it's like, I want to spend time with you. But if you're with a partner who's maybe more avoidant and it's like, oh God, I feel overwhelmed every time I'm with my partner because they want so much attention and I feel like I'm failing. I'm going to go to work because I get a lot of I've got a lot of good feelings from work. So then you can end up in a strategy of, where you have an insecure partner with an avoidant partner, which is something that we see quite often. If someone has a lot of trauma, you end up with sort of a fuck you, come here kind of thing where it's like where they're disorganized in their attachment style or their strategy.
So interesting.
And so our goal is always secure attachment. Okay, so do you have questions for me? I said a lot.
No, I'm like, oh my God, I love hearing about all these different things. I want to know an example of like how each of these people show up in a relationship just out of like, and what that could have meant from the past. Okay. Because I think a lot of people right now are like, I wonder what mine are. And there is a test out there you can take, of course. But like, can you give an example of like an emotionally unattached person would it be anxious? Attachment would probably show up like this, or like an example of how they show up.
So like a secure couple would be, a secure couple, I could use myself with my husband.
Yeah, because how many years have you been married?
30. Well, it's 2024. We got married in 86. Is it 38 years?
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, is that right?
Someone's going to probably be like, nope, wrong. Write it on the YouTube. Okay. All right.
I know. They're going to be, 38 years.
Wow, and that's amazing.
We haven't, we haven't always been secure, but we can have an argument or something like that. On Friday, I was looking for some socks and I like emptied my sock drawer and I was really in a rush and the bedroom was a mess. And he sent me a text and he said, there was some animal that was in our room.
Oh my God.
There's like things are all over it. And I was just laughing and he's, cause he's really tidy.
Yes.
And so, but I think he came at me with humor, which is typical of men. I laughed about it. But if we were so that's a really good example. And I laughed and I said, sorry, I'll clean up when I get home.
Oh, but that's okay. You're saying that's a secure, almost like conflict. It was not a big conflict, but
it's not. And so like, that's an example of like that. It could have been a conflictual thing. Like, oh my God, why is she so messy all the time? But he was joking with me.
That's cute though.
Okay. So an insecurely attached example might be where you really want to get attention from your partner. Mm-hmm. You really want to see them and you want to go out on a date and your partner keeps working late and they're working late and you're like, why don't you want to spend time with me? And they're like, but I'm making money for the family. I'm making money for the family. So the negativity of that makes the partner want to exit.
So it pushes them away even further.
It pushes them away even further. But I think if that partner is saying, I grew up without a lot of money and I want to know that I feel really secure when I have money. And if I can talk to you about that, and the other partner can say, well, money doesn't matter to me so much and I just want to be with you, then they can have that kind of conversation. Okay. But what happened, I'm boiling it down to be really simplistic.
Yeah, one simple example is, this is perfect. I wanted to understand and have people relate a little bit of I kind of feel like that, or my partner feels like that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. And so the come here, go away kind of thing. I want to feel loved by you. And typically, and I know I'm being heteronormative, but typically men connect with their partners mostly through sex and sexual intimacy, and women tend to connect through words. And so both need to exist. We have a negative cycle in the emotional realm, and we can have a negative cycle in the sexual realm.
Yep.
Typically we'll have a female who's pursuing their partner for connection.
Yep.
and a male who's maybe more avoidantly attached. And then in the sexual cycle, it's generally the reverse. And I would say 80% of the time, as I'm describing both of the cycles.
What can you dive into those cycles a little bit more and just what you're seeing as like, because that sounds like majority of what you see, or like at least heavily what you see.
Right. Is that they're where you might have, I'm just trying to think of like an example, and like, so you might have somebody who's, I'm going to be heteronormative. So you have this female who's running the house, trying to manage the house, and her partner, her male partner, she's got kids and she's busy trying to run everything.
So I see that a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
Just like out of, just observation.
Yeah. I mean, if you just take the gender roles as they are, but she's also working and he's working and they're doing things and she's arranging things with the kids. And he's like, I just want to play with the kids. I don't really want to do what you're saying. And when you talk to me, I'm not really going to pay attention to you. And so she's really anxious and overwhelmed. And he's like, why don't you want to have sex with me? Yeah. How come? And she's like, because I don't feel like you're there for me. And underneath it, so this is sort of maybe getting into more of the attachment needs.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, so a lot of times when we get to, so what we do in therapy is we try to understand their negative cycle. So you can see this is so much deeper than the love languages. It's so much deeper. Yeah. So we're trying to understand their moves in their negative cycle. Underneath all of the moves of the negative cycle are these attachment needs. Yeah. Like, are you there for me? Are you responsive to me? Are you emotionally engaged with me? Are you reliable? Are you going to come home when you say you're going to come home? And so underneath all of those kinds of things are these attachment needs that people are trying to get at.
Yeah. So it's really underlying, but it's showing up in an issue. And really it's like what they're needing.
They're needing. And a lot of times people will say, I need you to be there for me. Yeah. But they'll yell it at each other instead of saying it in a way. I mean, I've had people in really sweet moments. Like I think I said this to you before, like, I need you to be my rock. Yeah. I need to know I'm not a bitch. I need to know that you love me, even though I'm complicated. And I had one person, she said, and he's like, I love that you're complicated. Oh. I mean, and I think those are these bonding moments.
It's really sweet.
Yeah. Or I need to know that like, I'm not too emotional for you. Yeah. And so these moments and these bonding moments where these people have this and they know that that attachment need has been met by their partner.
That's beautiful.
And they're so much more secure. You look like you're tearing up.
I know. I'm like, glossy. Yeah. I know. Cause it's so cute. It's so special. You can like feel the emotions that people would feel in that moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I've said to Jordan, I'm like, I feel like I used to self-sabotage a lot. And I would be like, I feel like I'm crazy, he's like, I like that you're crazy. Like, he's like, it's okay. Yeah. And I'm like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, you're not going to dump me because I said something crazy one time, it was like that insecurity that I was coming into it with. Right. Which Renee said this, but when she showed up here, she was like, I feel like seeing you back then a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, and seeing me now, and our relationship, she's like, you seem like you're so much more secure and settled. Yeah.
You seem really a lot settled. So you can tell that you guys have done work.
Yeah. Of course.
Because you were saying that there was things that you were worried about and things like that.
And we just, you address them and you work on them and you see if the partner is willing to feel and see those things. But it took multiple times and efforts of like, we're going to go on a date and we're going to talk about what's bugging us, and just talking it out. And really none of what I was sad that he was bugged by these specific things. And he was really sad that I was bugged by these specific things. And what do? You just meet in the middle, or it shows your true colors and you separate.
So what I want to say is as you describe your relationship, it's secure. And so that doesn't mean that couples, if you're going to be in a long-term relationship with someone, you are always going to have conflict.
Of course. I mean,
because you're two different people, you're always going to have conflict. Secure couples can solve their problems. They can say, okay, let's sit down and talk about it. And it might be, you might have had an argument and it might be a day or two before you can kind of solve it. What I see in my office is people they can't repair. And so they want to talk about this content, but they have this cycle in the way. So they're not able to repair. And so I think the repair process is like, okay, how are we going to talk about it? And so there's lots of different strategies that people use that that are, they'll defensiveness,
Yes.
or they'll like, oh, you're always, and they'll
I've
use
heard that one before.
Yeah, you always do that, or what's wrong with you, or they'll blame the other person, or they'll go after their intent, and they'll do a lot of these defensive strategies to protect themselves. And so we want to try to find out what that protection is. And so it's a process model where we're going to talk to them about like what are their different moves in the cycle, so that those things are blocking, even though they have good reasons why they're doing it, but they're blocking these more vulnerable kinds of things that they want to talk about. Like, I need to know that I'm enough for you.
Yeah.
Or that you have my back, as we talked about in the person who
The moving situation. I want to hear a little bit more about attachment styles then, and like how that shows up. We were talking about this before, is like when they're a child and like when they're a parent, but with their parents, like how that develops.
Okay. Back in the 50s, and people want to YouTube this. They might even be on YouTube. Mary Ainsworth did these studies. It was called the child in the strange situation.
Okay.
So parents would drop off, and I think they were 3-year-olds. They drop off their child, and the child would be alone in a room with a bunch of toys. If the child had secure attachment, mom would leave and the child would play, but the child would protest a little bit and then play with the toys, and mom would come back and child would come to mom, give mom a hug, and then they'd leave. And that's secure. Okay. How they came back together is the telling of their attachment strategy.
Because it's a little bothersome to be left in a weird empty room with a bunch of toys regardless. So it's saying like, okay, this is going to irritate a little bit.
It's going to irritate you. And it's like, how are you going to manage that?
Okay.
And so you're looking through a one-way mirror at these kids.
I have seen this and I don't know why, but I've
maybe
definitely
it's just like
seen
psychology 101
Maybe
or something.
I did take, I took psychology in both high school and college. So
okay, so you probably did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, and then the next one, this is really fascinating.
Okay.
So then the next one is the anxious. So then they drop off the child. The child is crying the whole time. Oh my God, crying, can barely settle.
Oh,
mom comes back, crying. It's like, those are the clinging ones. Those are the, you have the clinging friends. They're just clinging, and they're anxious because mom isn't really there. And so that's they could just never settle.
Okay.
The third type is your avoidant one. And I maybe think about a cat. It's that you drop off the child, whatever. And mom comes, who cares? And it's
at
like
3 though. That's crazy.
3, and those are the avoidantly attached ones. The ones who've been abused. And this is really, it's horrible and breaks your heart to watch. So mom drops them off. They're crying. They're out of control, whatever. Mom comes in, their arms are up and they're walking backwards.
Oh no.
It's like, because
they're scared.
Well, they're scared because mom has been abusive, and they're like, you are the source of my comfort, but you're also the source of
scary.
You're scary. So that's how we get the disorganized attachment.
Interesting.
So it's always in the way that you come together.
Wow.
And so, I think there's a part of me, for most of my life, I thought I was anxiously attached. Only recently have I realized I'm more avoidantly attached.
Really? And will you explain what you saw between the two?
What I saw. So I grew up, my dad was he just died recently, but he was pretty loud and abusive in some ways. Later in life, he wasn't, but he was really scary. And I used to tell myself, why do you have to be angry? We can just be calm. This is much of the reason why I'm a therapist. And so, what I realize is that I always thought that I was anxious, but I think what I've come to realize is like, I just avoid. I just avoid when something's hard. Sometimes I'll just kick it down the road, or I'll be like, whatever. And I think that's been more of my adult life, is that and what I did with anger was I was like, oh, I'm not going to be angry about that. I'm just going to let it go. So I was sort of avoidant of my own emotions.
Wow. I feel like, how do you know the difference between the two? Because I think they sometimes can look similar. Because I could sit here and say, like, I definitely avoid, like when I get overwhelmed, I just like, it's like, whatever, I'm just going to avoid that. But I'm anxious about it the whole time.
I know. Well,
so
that's actually, that it's really important to know that both the anxious strategy and the avoidance strategy are equally anxious.
Okay.
The avoidant person has to do, it's actually more metabolic load because they're pretending they're calm.
Oh.
And so if you take their pulse or you take this is out of the work of John Gottman, you take their blood, they have more cortisol in their blood.
Well, which makes sense because you're in like a state of stress.
You're in a state of
Which makes
stress.
sense.
So, but I think I used to be more anxious. And then as I've gotten older, I'm a little bit more avoidant. But so, I mean, I think that it's, but that's more about what you do with your own emotions versus your strategy around how you show up with other people.
What would you say? Because I hear about this a lot of like, I'm anxious because a partner like in my past cheated on me, which I've also felt too. And it causes you to do weird stuff. Like I used to like do like the phone searching thing or like self-sabotage or be like, why are you looking at her like that? Or like just weird stuff like that. Like, what is that?
Well, that's, I mean, that is your anxiety coming out. And it's like you had a bad relationship. And of course, and I think we're wired to watch for the negative stuff because it's a way to protect yourself.
Yes.
It's like there's a big cliff over there. Don't go over there. You don't want to go off. So it's like we are wired to notice that. It's a good thing. And so what you want to do is tell your partner, I've been cheated on. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what would help me. And your partner's responsiveness to that, of course, I'm not going to look at another person. Of course, I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. You're good. You're good.
You're
and
good.
if
You're
you can
secure.
talk about it, you're secure. And if they can say to you, I'll be there for you and I wouldn't want to do that to you, you'll eventually move to more security around that, which sounds like you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Way more. I mean, it also was the person though, because I was attracting people that probably made me more anxious and were honestly mirroring behavior of exes who did cheat. And I was picking the same type of people over and over again. And I was still anxious. It's like, well, that really isn't rocket science why that is. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
I mean, I think if you're used to receiving love and you're in a situation where you're receiving love from somebody who isn't really there for you, or if they're sort of in and out of the situation, you're going to be like, oh, that's great. That's what love is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so,
I've seen that before. Like they'll like, they would fuck up and then they would actually like give me more love. Like they'd be like, I love you so much.
Oh, right.
Like,
Then
I'm
you're
like,
ending
oh my
up
God. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm like the best person ever. They think I'm the best person ever. Like, this is amazing. Little did I know the reason they were like, showering me with love was because they messed up.
Right.
Like the cycle kept going.
Right. And this is sort of the
going.
cycle of like, I mean, that's a remnant or the part of like this cycle of abuse, like that it's like, I'm going to, whatever. I'm not going to get into that or the violence business, but that's a whole different kind of thing.
Well, that was like emotional. Yeah. Like, but it's like just crazy, like behaviors.
Right.
I have a lot of write-ins and I think why don't we
do the write-ins?
The more the ones where I asked my listeners, what do you struggle with the most with your partner that causes conflict? And I think this will be good because I think you're going to see things that are related to like either relationship bonding or like attachment styles or attachment needs, or excuse me, attachment strategies or needs. Yeah. So I grouped them. There's a handful here. I would say I'm looking at about 10, and I grouped the ones I saw the most of. The first top, by far the most written in, was clear and open communication and constructive criticism. That is what causes conflict for them.
Okay, so it causes conflict when they're going to give clear and constructive criticism. Their partner can't handle it.
That one, or they don't feel like they have open communication.
Right.
A lot of people said feeling vulnerable enough to be transparent is scary.
Well, and I think that can happen in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
sorry, I had to crack my back.
Yeah,
I know. I'm over here.
These people don't want to go into a relationship and be like, oh, great, I want to be in an insecure relationship.
Right.
But it's like, okay, so your partner does something and you don't like it. And you might say, why are you doing that? And that might touch them and they might end up feeling bad and they might end up feeling like a failure. And I don't want to feel that anyway. So I'm going to avoid that. And then it's like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to talk about it because it just makes me feel bad. Can't you just love me the way that I am? And then we're just in this negative cycle. So it's a way that it starts with their protection, right? So what we do is we think about it as usually there's a triggering event or an event that happens. And then you end up feeling something. You end up having some sort of an emotional reaction and you make meaning of that. And then you get into your protective strategies.
Triggering event that happened in the relationship.
Yeah,
you mean?
in the relationship, right. So something happens, you get into these cycles because something happened.
Okay.
And then you end up being stuck in them over
You
and over
circle
again.
them because you're honestly, it sounds like it's because you're feeling harmed.
You're feeling
when you feel something familiar to that situation, you react in the same way because you've been there before and you're like, oh, I'm feeling harmed again. I'm going to pull away or
I'm going to pull away
or I'm going to get mad.
I'm going to get mad. And then but I'm not telling you, oh my goodness. So we get into these protective strategies and we talk to people we talk to our partners in ways where you're yelling at them or you're saying mean things or you're trying to get them to engage or you're avoiding, and that hurts. Both partners are hurt. Both partners are insecure and they can't talk about it. In those kinds of situations, when they can't talk about it, they can't repair. Like you were saying that you can do with Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I think I'm so thankful for that. We found such balance and it's pretty amazing. It's like, and you don't have to like, I don't know. I think a lot of times you can hear in other episodes, I'm like, yeah, no, we're pretty good, like old episodes. And it's like, we were trying to figure each other out, and repair things.
Right.
We just didn't know each other. And he's a very interesting human. Yeah. Now it's like, I can say, yeah, we're amazing. And I actually mean it wholeheartedly, 100%, so I don't know. It's very special. And I appreciate him more for his differences now more than I ever have.
Yeah.
Like he's teaches me that's like, you don't really have to be like, he's his way. And he is not bothered if you're like, I'm not that way. You know what I mean? If he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And people are like, oh, I do. He's like, okay, you guys go. Then I'm not going to do it. He's so like, this is who I am. And I know what I want and I don't want. And he's like, I'm unbothered by what that other people would care. You know what I mean?
He sounds like he's really secure.
He is. It's pretty amazing. So I'm really lucky for that.
Yeah.
But I will say not 100, but it feels like 100 previous relationships, I didn't feel that. And I felt like the communication was not clear. What would you say as advice for somebody with this? Like clear and open communication is actually what causes the most conflict or like we can't get there. I can picture nights when I'd come back from being out or something and something that happened at the party was bothersome to me. And I'm trying to have the conversation. I'm trying to bring it up and it just like goes to shit because we just can't.
Right. We don't necessarily. And I think that really what you've got. Stuff.
I had a hair on my microphone and I was like, it was tickling my lip and I'm like, every time I move my lip.
I know. It's just like an awful feeling. Well, and I think, I know now I'm a little hypervigilant about hairs. Yeah. So I think that in that kind of a situation, you were triggering him. You probably need to know what you were triggering in him. And he needed to be able to tell you what was happening inside. And when they're saying clear communication, something's going on in that clear communication where it's like that partner, the listening partner can't hear it. And you need to understand what it is that you're touching.
What could it be? Could it be like delivery of the information?
But so it's deeper than delivery because it's, I mean, yes, it could be delivery, but it's
triggering
like,
something else.
Well, right. Like what does the delivery mean? Like, do you think I'm stupid? Do you think that I'm not, how dare you think that I would look at other women? That's like, you're touching my integrity, which could be something that they had an experience in the past that's going on. Or it's like, I don't feel like I'm really good enough for you. You're really beautiful. And, I need attention from other people to know that I'm good enough and for you to know that I'm good enough because I'm chubby or something like that. Yeah. I don't know, or I don't feel good about myself in my body.
Yep.
Or, I mean, it could be anything so I think you've got to get to find out what's going on inside.
How do you do that though with your partner?
Partner. So then I think what I would do is talk about it when it's not hot. So, okay, can we, so my husband will say, can we talk about nothing bad?
Oh yeah.
Like he'll say or something like that.
Can I ask you a question? Don't be mad. And Jordan's like, what is this going to be? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Okay. But I got to know this. This has been rubbing me the wrong way. I'm sorry. I'm not coming at you. I promise. And it's not when I'm angry though.
Right. Not when you're angry. And I think the other thing is to be soft when you're going to do your approach and you're going to say, I noticed you got really upset with me when I talked to you about when we went out the other night and you looked at another woman. What was going on? Why did you get so mad at me?
Okay.
And so to be soft about that. And if your partner comes and asks you that, take a moment, take a breath. And if something does come up that doesn't feel good, you're going to have to tell them about it. Now, if there's not enough emotional safety in the relationship, you might have problems.
Okay.
So I think that it's all about emotional safety in the relationship.
Yep.
And so sometimes you can see partners where they'll be like, your intention, they'll start to judge your intention.
Oh.
Instead of saying like, my perception around this was that, instead of saying, you're doing that, you're doing that. And so it depends on how the conversation goes, but there's all of these deeper emotions going back to the love languages there's so much going on, and human nature is so complicated. So you've got to be able to find out what's getting touched in somebody.
What is it? There's a ton more I want to read into, but there's one that I have heard from like friends and just different write-in situations that were in the past. I call it, this is what I call it, a tit for tat person.
Argument. Yeah.
Can you explain this and tell me what's happening with this?
Okay. So you can usually we have generally 3 different kinds of cycles that people get caught in. Okay. We have pursue, withdraw, which is typical. Mm-hmm. That's probably 80% of what we see. It's the most common. It's the easiest. And I would say pursue, withdraw, where you have somebody who's coming at you more critically, and the withdrawer is going off. And you can withdraw into drugs and alcohol. You can withdraw into work. You can withdraw into TV. You can withdraw into a lot of other things.
Right.
Okay. So that's separate. This is not related to the attachment strategies. This is just a typical negative cycle. You can have a withdraw cycle where it's like super low energy. As a therapist, they're the hardest people to work with.
Really?
Because it's kind of like, hey guys, how are you? Good.
They don't
bring
like
anything.
Don't care.
They don't. But usually what you'll have is you'll have probably a burned out pursuer who's like, I don't care anymore. I can't do it anymore. And then so it looks like 2 withdrawers. Or you'll have what we call attack, which is I like the attack. And it's like, no, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. It's the tit for tat. And it's like, and you do that, and you do that too, and you do that too. And a lot of times they'll say, like, if we use my example with the socks, and it's like, I could have said to my husband, like, you leave your socks on the floor too.
Yeah.
And
throw it back at them.
Throw it back at them. And then you end up fighting about something else. It's like, who's the bad guy? No, you're it. No, you're it.
Where is that stemming from? Like, what is that's showing up? Because I feel like it's more common. And I think I saw it, more just in general in relationships that I was around. Yeah. Maybe at one point I brought it into a relationship. I don't know. But like, what is it?
Well, it's a defensive strategy where it's like, I can't hear your criticism, so I'm just going to blame you. And then and then it's a way to disarm the other person. But so a lot of times as a therapist, I'll say, okay, well, Sid does that too, but Jordan, what's going on for you? Yeah. Like, what's going on for you? Why does that matter to you? So it's sort of a blame. You get into this blame cycle, and it's a way to protect themselves.
Interesting.
So it just, if you think about it, if you get into that tit for tat kind of thing, it's a blame cycle.
I've seen it. I've seen friends.
Was it like the Bickersons?
Yeah, Bickersons. That's their last name.
No, I know. The Bickersons is like, have you ever heard of that?
No.
Bicker. Like, sometimes people will come in. I've had clients that have come in and they're like, people call us the Bickersons.
Oh my God. Oh,
like you're
that's not a good thing.
I know.
Only time Jordan and I are bicker McGee's is when we're playing pickleball together. We've decided we can't play pickleball together. Yeah. We can play against each other.
Yeah.
We can't be on a team.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Right.
It's like, he's like, why the hell didn't you get that? And I'm like,
I know.
You were in my area. You should have gotten that. It's like,
I want to try pickleball. I've heard it's so much fun. Yeah. I've heard it's really
addicted.
Fun. Yeah.
Addicted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Okay.
Next one I see a lot is I have so much anxiety from their perspective and I self-sabotage. That's what we struggle the most with and causes conflict.
I want to say that concept, self-sabotage, makes no sense to me. I think we always do behaviors for a purpose. Now, you might not want to be doing that behavior, but there's some kind of payoff that you're getting from the behavior you don't want to do. So it's
interesting.
So I don't know, when I think about self-sabotage, if you're wanting a workout program, if you start, this is what is in my mind, knowing that you're a trainer.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to start a workout program. But man, I'm tired after work. I'd rather go home and put my feet up. You could call that self-sabotage, but it's kind of like, but you're getting something out of that behavior. So maybe you need to work on helping your energy or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm trying to think of a relationship situation too that could give an
like
example.
What is a self-sabotage in that?
I've seen people who like they get in something really, really good. This is what I hear a lot when I read write-ins. Like they're in something really, really good, but like they pick fights for no reason because the explanation is always like, I'm afraid of it ending, so I'm just going to ruin it now.
That's
or something
just,
like that.
I'm going to just like,
I'm going to cause conflict for
I'm going to push
no
you.
reason.
Yeah. I'm going to
push you away.
I'm going to push you away. And probably maybe that person is getting too close and it's uncomfortable. And it's like, there's always something going on.
For sure.
There's something going on. And I think that and in therapy, we would try to dig deeper. You picked a fight. What was going on for you that you were so angry? So it could have been you displaced anger from work or something like that. But is it that your partner, we really want to keep our partner just the right distance from us. Like we want them close, but not too close.
Yep.
Because sometimes it can be scary because we've all been hurt in life.
Yeah.
So that does that make sense to you?
Yeah. It sounds like insecurity and it sounds like probably a bit of anxious attachment if I'm taking off of what you're saying.
Exactly. You
and
got
it's
it.
like, well, I'm insecure. So like, oh, just get away from me. Like, or like, I'm going to react to this even though it's because I'm scared.
I'm scared, but it's instead of being able to say, and so then our attachment messages get hidden and we send unclear messages instead of being able to say, you came in and you wanted to hug me and I wasn't ready to hug you right now. And so I'm overwhelmed or whatever. My mind isn't there and I'm not ready for that. Instead, I'm going to push you away.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's, again, all behavior makes sense and there's a purpose to all the behavior.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
This one says understanding each other's love languages and needs, which we have talked about. It more sounds like a communication problem. This one says lack of quality time with busy schedules.
Right. And so it's sort of the same thing. What are you running from?
Okay.
Like you're really busy. And so I often see that where I'll see couples that'll come in and they'll be like, we just don't have any time to talk. We're just so busy. We've got these kids.
That gives me anxiety.
I know. So there's a wonderful book. It's A General Theory of Love, it's a really sweet book. But at any rate, in that book, they've done some research. Couples that are like, you don't need hours and hours of quality time to connect, but it's something like 3 or 4 minutes of deep connecting time. It might be a hug. It might be just a few minutes at dinner where you're talking about what's inside, what's deeply that you wouldn't tell anybody else, but you would tell your partner because they matter to you so much. So that's kind of like, this sounds like an anxious couple who's like doing busyness to avoid each other.
And what do you, there's many things that could be going on there, but like what causes that usually? Like, it could be many things, but I'm just saying, like, is it from their childhood? Do you think that it's causing anxiousness or could it be from?
It could be that they're frustrated with their partner. They're avoiding a deep discussion. It could be, I don't know. It's
hard to say without context. I know, but
it could be many, many, many things. I'm sorry to.
That's okay. But it's just, there's an underlying reason is what I'm trying to basically get you to say too.
Yeah.
This one you had a comment about when we were thinking about talking about this, introverted versus extroverted. That's why we have conflict.
This is going to be controversial. So
I'm scared. I'm just waiting for the YouTube trolls. Here we go, baby.
We're going to get negative comments.
No,
Here they come.
Okay.
There's not necessarily a discrete introversion and a discrete extroversion.
Meaning only that.
Right. We are all on a scale, and introverts reach saturation sooner than extroverts do. The other thing is we all tend to go more toward the middle as we age. And so
I could see that.
Yeah. And so, but what's going on in this one, so what they do say, the research, this is interesting. Two introverts have the happiest relationship. Sometimes I think it's because they don't go anywhere.
They're just with each other. They're chilling.
They're chilling out.
I could see that though.
I know. It makes sense. I think that's sort of interesting research. But I think that what we're seeing is, okay, I just lost my train of thought.
No, just about introvert versus extrovert.
Oh yeah, and that's why they're
causing conflict.
Right. And what it sounds like is one partner wants to go out more and the other one wants to stay at home.
Me and Jordan in the beginning of our relationship.
Where you wanted to go out more?
I wanted to go out more. I was like, we're going to get boring. Like we're boring if we don't go out. We got to go to the bars. Like what? I'm only 20 where we met when I was like 23, maybe 22.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of COVID. So I'm like, what year was that? I was probably 23 when we met.
I'm
like, we're boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to be boring. Like we got to go do things. Like you don't ever drink. Why don't you drink? Why not? Like you're not, and I feel like I'm embarrassed to even admit that's how I thought, because in reality, if I'm being honest, and just from what I'm, like I'm relating to the situation, because I thought the same thing. It was like, oh my God, he's introverted, I'm extroverted.
Yeah.
This ain't gonna go. I actually really wanted to slow down. I actually really wanted to stop going out, but it was like what I felt like everybody did or should do, or that was my phase of life I should be in.
Right.
And I actually was like, I couldn't allow myself to slow down for fear. I think I would find more things in myself that maybe I didn't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So really, I was looking at it really wrong, like really, really wrong.
Right.
And I could see that.
But what's so interesting, you can tell you've done so much work. I really appreciate what you're saying. Yeah. Part of that is age of life too. You're 23, 22 years old, and you're building friendships. You're doing all these things. I don't know how old he is.
He's 30. Well, he's going to be 33 coming up, and I'm going to be 27 coming up.
Okay. Yeah. So that he was in a different phase a little bit back then. And so you were just trying to find that.
And my mom was like, and I love, because my mom's like so real when she looks at it, she goes, do you want someone that goes out a lot?
I know, that's just
and I go, no. And she's like, then what are you complaining about?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. Like she didn't say it like that. She's the most unaggressive person I've ever met in my whole life. So she didn't say it. Everyone's like, everyone who knows my mom, they're like, Susan would never say that like that, but that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's not what you'd want anyway. What are you doing? So not that I'm giving advice for this, because you're going to talk about how the spectrum is different and what really maybe is going on there, but maybe you need to look inward and see what you're actually wanting, and maybe what you are stirring about that makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly.
To be probably the more introverted self of you. Because when I see introvert, extrovert, I guarantee the extrovert wrote that in.
For sure.
Because I am considered the extrovert in my relationship.
I think this is like extrovert wants to go out, and why are you such a bump on the log, and why are you not wanting to do things?
Why don't you want to stay out late, and why you don't want to go do this? And like, why are you tired when it hits 10 p.m.? Stay out. What the heck? That's not fun. You're no fun. That's what was in my mind back then.
Wow. Yeah. I feel bad for Jordan.
No, I know. And I never would be like, you're no fun or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, are you not like fun enough? Like, is it going to make me boring?
Yeah.
And he knows this now. It's not like it's harmful anymore, but it was really actually me.
Yeah.
I was the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know that now.
The problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a lot of the problem.
Taylor
actually.
Swift.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you how many times in therapy when that song came out, people have been saying, it's me, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the problem. It's me.
It's me.
What would you say to these people that are talking about their conflict coming from introvert, extrovert? So they're probably on a spectrum.
There's probably a spectrum, which is, it's not necessarily introvert, extrovert, but it's sort of like, I would say to the one who wants to go out all the time, what's hard about staying home? And I would say to the one who wants to stay home all the time, what's hard about going out? What gets in the way of you guys talking about it? What happens? And that's really what is the process about how you go talking about it?
Yeah.
What do you just shut down? Do you I think that's in all of these cases, what happens? How do you manage these conflict situations?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
A few more write-ins and then we'll move on to actual full situation write-ins. This one says, we're spending too much time together. We're not having independent time. And the sister one to that says we feel like we're roommates living together. Okay. They're kind of sisters in the way, because they're both about spending, in quotes, too much time together, not having independent time. And we're feeling like roommates.
We're feeling like roommates. Well, I don't know. I mean, I wonder, they are like sisters. The roommate situation is, how come it got desexualized?
Yeah.
What's going on in their sexual cycle, and where did they lose their romantic relationship? So what happened there is what I'd want to understand.
Yeah.
The one who's spending too much time together, I would say they're not talking about what's meaningful to them, or they're not talking deep enough, so it's boring.
Yeah, so they're just sitting next to each other on the couch watching TV and not ever
interacting or doing something, or go do something together where you're spending time that's more meaningful.
that I really appreciate that one too.
Yeah.
Cause I was always fearful of that moving in with someone. Cause Jordan's the first person I've lived with as a partner.
Yeah.
And, even the other night he was like, we have a date night every week. It's a rule.
Yeah. That's
because
great.
we're very busy.
Yeah.
But we always end the night with each other, and we always make a day for a date night. That's like that will not fly if it's not happening.
Yeah.
And again, if we're traveling, shit happens for a week. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But he just made a res for us to go to Makanda.
I
to a
love
restaurant.
Makanda.
I love Makanda too.
I know,
We had
I
a
loved it.
reservation or a gift card from our engagement.
Yeah.
And we went and we just sat, and he's like, can I sit next to you instead of across? And it just like,
it's so
those little
sweet.
tiny things are so special. Like, and
did you tell him?
Yeah, I
that you
did.
love
I need
that?
to tell him again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like really like, tell him like, I loved it when you sat next to me.
It was
like,
special.
Yeah.
And he was being kind of quiet, and I was like looking at him. He goes, I'm really hangry right now. And I was like, oh, that's okay.
But see, like, look at how he's telling you what's.
I know.
It's
and I
great.
go, I'm kind of hangry. I'm not going to lie either, as I'm smiling, because I'm kind of just someone who just like, I don't know, I'm just floating through.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of hangry too. And then we kind of sat there.
Yeah.
We just kind of enjoyed each other's company and looked around and until we ate, and then we could actually converse again, because we were both just like
hurry up and
I need food.
Yeah,
no, we both were starving.
Yeah.
We both had long days, but just little moments like that are really like, that's how we get out, because we are technically roommates. We live together.
Yeah.
But truly doing something has made me 0% fearful of ever becoming a roommate only.
Well, I mean, I think that the roommate situation, if you're like a roommate, you might not talk about your deeper emotions.
Yeah. Or cuddle or make the time to do those things.
Or like cook together. I mean, you would cook together, but it's like where there's a physical expression of that closeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Okay.
Serious conversations met with sarcasm. That one was interesting to me.
That's again a defensive strategy. So this is a little, I do not understand sarcasm. Like, it doesn't trigger in your head?
Doesn't
I have a couple that I used to see a long time ago, and they'd be like, and I told them that, and they were like, Renee, this is sarcasm. They would raise their hands. And I was like, okay, good. Tell me. But it's like, I think that, do you know that it means tearing of flesh? Like if you look it up in the dictionary, it's like sarcasm is, it's anger kind of twisted.
Yeah.
And so
I don't love it anymore.
I don't love it.
I'm sarcastic, but I'll make like a funny joke, but it's not dark. So I don't even think it's sarcasm. I think it's just a joke.
It's just a joke. Well,
but
joking is, I think I love humor.
Always glued the two together, assuming that I was sarcastic, but really it's never dark.
Right.
And it's never attacking someone else.
Right. And I think that that's what I'm talking about. If this is like, oh, there you go again, asking this, or, that sort of thing. I think what it is it's a defensive strategy. So right before they might have gotten sarcastic, like what happened? What was touched in them that made them angry? And why is it hard to be able to be direct about like, that comment really didn't feel good to me?
Yeah, like I don't like what you're saying. Or,
I don't like what you're saying.
It felt icky to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The last one I'll say was there's a few that talk about wanting more affection. We have conflict because I want more affection and I'm not getting it.
Right. And that is really typical that I see in my office.
Really?
And so okay, so what you want to do is to explore the blocks to the affection. Like, so that one partner, and that's so typical, where one partner wants more affection, and it's like, do they want verbal affection? Do they want physical affection? Do they want more sex? It sort of depends on what it is. So you want to get really clear about that.
Yep.
But there's something going on in the relationship that's causing that rift. And why can't the partner, the one who's not giving the affection, come forward? And how does the partner who wants more affection ask for it?
Yeah.
And so it's like, so a lot of times it could be a turnoff in the way that they're asking for it. Maybe they're grabbing at their partner, or maybe there's been some pressure. And so there's unfortunately, 1 in 3 women experiences sexual coercion.
What is, explain that a little bit here.
Yeah, this is like
a pressuring,
for that, with sexual coercion, and that's
like, come on,
come on, you need to do this for me. Look what I did for you. Like, there's this tit for tat.
It's hard for me to even hear that because I am so like just secure in myself that I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'd be so
I know.
Like,
but
what?
I mean, I
don't
think
talk to me like that. But you can only say that when you're in something that you can see clearly.
Right.
If I was in that, there's no freaking way I'd be saying
so
that.
as you see this is like, if we think about your just giving, if we're bring this back to the love languages, if my love language is sexual or physical touch, how can I just do that if I'm being coerced? And it's like, and there are people who do, where they'll be just like, okay. And then they're just going to lay there like, whatever. That's like, it's
icky.
not really being alive. But the thing is like, what's in the way of being able to talk about it? Like, this is really hard for me. So you end up with some of these kind of cycles. But I think on the other side, the person who's not receiving the affection is like, that, and if that is something that they really value and their partner isn't giving it to them, that's really hard. And it's a way that they want to express their love. It's very difficult.
That is, that would be very hard on either side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say to someone like, how are they going about maybe repairing that?
Right. And I love that you're using that word.
Like
so
it?
that
Brownie points.
She's getting...
I winked at the camera if you missed it.
Oh, yeah, that's great. The question is, how would they go about repairing that? I mean, I think that it's kind of like, it depends on which person. It's like, I want to, like, what's in the way? Here's what's in the way of me wanting to be physically close to you.
Do you see something more than other things? Like, do you see a problem that shows up in much more relationships than others?
There's lots of reasons why.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want like a little potpourri?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I love a little potpourri.
There could be somebody, let's just say they went out and their partner is insulting them and making jokes they're the butt of the jokes. And
they make them feel dumb.
They make them feel dumb, or they make them
I've seen that before.
Yes. If you're in a sexual relationship, being that vulnerable with somebody who has put you down it's a turn off.
Ick.
So right. So that's not, and this is for both men and women. There's so many different reasons that people are now, maybe one of the partners is using a lot of porn and that's a turn off to them. Your partner was flirting with somebody else and you're like, that's a huge turn off.
Down.
Yeah. Or it could be, and I know that this is sort of typical, like, I don't feel like my partner's really there for me. I'm insecure. So I don't want to be that vulnerable with you to be sexual with you.
Yeah, which all makes sense.
Right.
Okay. I just was curious what you see and like what your, what that is. Cause I think people listen and they hear like, oh, I relate to that, but I wonder if this is normal, like what I feel.
And I think what I would want to say is, and people, in my office, I'm like, can you turn and tell your partner that? Can you turn and tell your partner? Can you turn and tell your partner
when
that?
They're seeing you solo?
When they're seeing me, no, together.
Oh, really?
As a couple, yeah. Can you turn and tell
instead
him?
of telling you?
Yes, and telling. But I think usually what we try to do is we try to get them more vulnerable, and then we'll have, once we've gotten them nice and more vulnerable, then you're going to turn and tell, because a lot of times people are shouting at each other, or they're angry with each other, and they're not talking about what's inside. And they're like, so we want to get them more vulnerable.
Yeah. They use the pent up anger and then they come down because they can let their guard down a little bit more.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Let's do some Call SYD segment. Okay. That's the Call SYD. You're calling me. Ideally, you're calling me. I always say this and everyone's like, oh, SYD, I will change your voice.
Yeah.
And I will change your your call in, your voicemail to me. And I'll make sure that nobody knows who you are. So I promise if you're calling me and you're leaving a voicemail and it rings for a long time, I don't know why Google does that. Yeah. I might change my platform because it's a little funky.
Yeah.
But I will change your voice and it will be anonymous. Always, always, always. If you don't, you can always write into me. I have a number. It's 612-470-7569. Or if you're international, you can always write into my advice box on my website, which is very easy to find in my link in bio anywhere. So that's where these are coming from.
Okay.
Let's dive into them because I think that you're going to see a lot of attachment strategies in here that we need to dive into.
Okay.
First one says, relationship/dating advice. Are my standards too high? I'm a 26-year-old female born and raised in Minnesota. I'll admit I haven't had the best of luck with dating. I've never had a long-term relationship and I am still a virgin. I've been on a few dates and never clicked or found a great connection with anyone. I am dating with the intention of a long-term relationship and would like a partner who is educated, smart, funny, and has a stable job. My friends have been saying recently that my standards are too high and I should just screw it and do hookups. Not my thing, but to teach their own. Are my standards and wanting a relationship too much to ask?
No.
Girlfriend.
No way.
No.
No way.
And can I just say, in my opinion, if your friends are just saying like, well, just go hook up with somebody, do whatever, that's a little more of their insecurity coming out. And they're also like, if you are speaking to them like, sex is my goal, that's what I want, then yes, that's when the advice maybe is warranted, where it's like, go just hook up with somebody and like get more comfortable.
Yeah.
But if you're saying I'm dating for a relationship and they're receiving that and then giving to you advice to go just hook up with a little old Joe Blow or over there, like, that's not even what you're looking for. They're not hearing you.
And I think that the act of sex is a very intimate act.
I completely agree.
And I think that it usually doesn't go well when people are into the hookup scene. So what I would say is,
I don't think so.
This person needs to continue to look for what they want.
Stay your course. That's what I have to say.
Stay your course. Agreed.
I think the right person too, like if you're like, I'm still a virgin, it's like, that's okay.
It's just fine.
It doesn't matter. Like you're going to find the right person. There's a reason you're being emotionally, like you're secure in yourself. You know what you want and you're saving those moments for someone that's special, hopefully, ideally one.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
okay.
You're not crazy. We had to read that one because it's like, sister, keep going what you're doing.
Right. Follow your dreams.
Exactly.
Yes.
Supporting a significant other with their mental health. This is CALL SYD number 2. Hi, Sid. I love the podcast, and your topics and conversations resonate with me and so many others. So happy to watch you and thrive. Okay, that's cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I would love some expert advice on how to handle/support a partner who has anxiety. My boyfriend gets really bad anxiety from time to time, which he has dealt with his whole life. He will have panic attacks, overthinks himself into a spiral, and says his head never is quiet, is like a quote unquote war zone. I have been fortunate to not have personally dealt with anxiety like this, so I wanted to know if there was ways or things I could do to support him during these instances. I feel like I can only help to a certain extent because I have no personal experience in the department. It's not all the time, but when it happens, he shuts down. He doesn't want to open up as a way to protect/not burden me from his mind. That's really, really, really sad.
Well, it's I don't know about sad, but he's really
struggling.
He's struggling. And so I think what I would say to her is ask him what would be helpful for him to talk about it. And because these inevitably are going to come. And also I would want to know, he's protecting her from it because what is he worried about? Is he worried that it'll be contagious, that he'll make her anxious? Or
probably how she'll receive it maybe.
Or also what would she think of him? I think that they should do a little conversation around like, what does his anxiety mean to him? And to be able to share it, because I think also for her to know like what would be most helpful. But it sounds like it's part of their dynamic now. And so I think she's going to learn maybe what his triggers are. I also would say he needs some therapy.
Of course.
You do not need to live with anxiety like that and panic attacks like that. There's a lot that they can do. And anxiety responds really well to therapy.
Yeah.
So
I'm a walking like billboard of that basically.
Yeah.
I was telling Renee before we started recording, like I used to have OCD.
Yeah.
That was showing up because of, something that came in my life and then it turned to like anxiety and then it turned to anxiety attacks and then it just turned to, still anxiety. But I will say there was something very off about my life when my anxiety is bad.
Yeah.
Like it's very obvious that it's coming from something that's like stressing me out.
Well, and it's just, I always say like anxiety is a little warning sign.
Yeah.
It's like something isn't right. Pay attention.
Yeah.
All of our emotions are there to protect us. And so all of our emotions, and also this is just a little thing.
What?
We have more words for negative emotions, language in all of the countries and all of the languages. There's more language for negative emotions than positive ones.
That's sad.
Well, it's good because
Is
it does.
it?
It's good because when you can differentiate all the negative emotions, they're there for a reason.
True.
They're keeping you they're keeping you safe.
That's true.
So that your emotions are they're meant to move you and they're beautiful.
Yeah, they are. They are beautiful.
And they all have they live in your body. They all have like a body sensation associated with them.
Oh, I need to listen more when I'm like feeling some sort of way. What am I feeling?
Where do you feel that in your chest or in your in your gut? And like what happens to you? How do you embody your emotions?
Yeah.
Especially for a trainer like you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I know because I carry people tell you things and they're heavy. They're heavy sometimes.
Right. In your neck or something like that, or I feel flesh in my face. Like shame is usually like a nauseous feeling in your stomach.
Yeah.
Like so all of the
I guess that's so
emotions,
true.
we don't have a lot of words for the happy emotions. expressions. I mean, a lot of times, we have some words, but they're
Yeah.
much more differentiated.
Yeah.
Sorry, I took us on a tangent.
Oh, no, that's okay. Tangents are good
Okay.
I like that.
Okay.
I would say just being with the anxiety that I've had and what I want to tell this person is like, well, I love their advice of being like, well, sitting them down and being like, what are you afraid of something like when you keep your anxiety from me, like, what are you afraid of me reacting as or something like that? Like
or
that,
more like, what will I see in you?
Yeah.
Like, what are you like? Yeah. What's going on for you?
Yeah.
Like what's going on when you have this anxiety and you're trying to hide it from me? What is it that you don't want me to see? Are you worried I'll judge you? Like any of those kinds of things.
And then I would probably approach it and be like, I would be so, you'd suggest therapy a few times and say like, I would feel so proud of you if you went to therapy.
And this
it
is
would
like
make me so happy.
Support and validation.
Yeah.
So great.
And
That's
to see
beautiful.
you just try something different to like work on the situation.
Exactly.
But
and you
that
don't
is
need to
hard.
live with it.
Yeah. And it's not your thing to fix your partner.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I would say from what I know from the situation.
Right. And you wouldn't they need help and you can support, but it's not your job to be their therapist.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. This is call SYD number 3.
Okay.
Marriage anxiety, it says. How do I deal with anxiety and fears around marriage despite my fiance being wonderful? Apologies in advance for the length of this. My fiance and I have been together for 8.5 years and we are getting married this summer. My fiance is truly wonderful and I'm grateful every day to spend my life with him. Our relationship continues to get stronger with time. However, I am slightly terrified of marriage for reasons that have nothing to do with him. My mom was married and divorced twice. Her relationship and divorce with my father was quite ugly and ultimately led to the end of my relationship with my father and abandonment issues for me. I spent a lot of time in therapy working through this already and have come to accept the things and how they are. My 2 older siblings are both married with kids, but they have unhealthy and unhappy relationships. As terrible as it sounds, my greatest fear is ending up in a marriage like my family. I've never had a close role model for what a good marriage looks like. My fiance comes from a lovely, close-knit family, so he tries his best to understand, but of course cannot fully. Sometimes I find myself picking arguments, overanalyzing, or looking for faults because I'm afraid something is wrong and I'm missing it. Honestly, I'm not proud of how I used to handle conflict with him due to my past and how conflict was handled in my family. But we have done a lot of work together and separately on communication and really have made great progress. Despite all the positive, there's always the worry in the back of my mind that things are going to implode. As the wedding gets closer, I'm nervous these fears are going to increase, yet I know my whole heart that he is the love of my life and I couldn't imagine a future without him. These contradicting feelings drive me crazy. Any advice for handling these fears and anxieties would be greatly appreciated. Appreciate all your advice and always enjoy listening.
Wow. So that listener has really good reasons to be anxious.
Yeah, I was like, you are human.
Yeah, you're human. And I think that this relationship anxiety, because they don't ever have a role model for what a healthy relationship is, they're going into an abyss. They don't know. And so, of course, they're anxious.
Of course you feel those things.
Yes, of course you do. So what I would say is to embrace them and then have their partner be there for them and say, okay, we got this. We're going to be there. And can they talk to their partner about it when they're feeling anxious?
Absolutely.
So that they could get support.
I think you have you already know the answer, that you have reasons to feel those things.
Exactly.
Like you said, this person said that in their writing. They're like, I've been to therapy. I understand what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I understand there's broken relationships. My flip flop to the situation, because I actually am similar to that.
Yeah.
My mom was married 2 times.
Yeah.
My parents are not together, but I have a great relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
I have a younger sister who I've had to stay strong for, which was hard for a long time.
Yeah.
But I would say what I saw, instead of saying like, I don't know what a good one looks like, instead of taking that fear, I actually flipped it and was like, well, I definitely know what doesn't look good. And I'm not seeing those things in this.
Yeah.
So really, I actually feel much more secure. So I almost like flipped it. And it helped me way more than living in the fear of like, well, what happens? Like, what happens when they don't find me attractive anymore later on in life? Or like, that's how I feel, internalizing that. It's like, well, no, none of the signs look the same as what I saw from my parents or my grandparents or my aunts and uncles.
Right.
Seems to me like it's looking pretty healthy.
Right.
And then I calmed myself down.
And I think I love that you're saying that you flipped it on its head and then that was calming to you. I also think you could talk to Jordan.
Yeah.
And you can say,
and I did too.
Yeah. And I think that it's like, and you can solve your problems with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, if you're starting to feel insecure or something's going on, you want to be able to go to your partner and say that, can this person go to her partner?
That's a huge thing.
Right. Can you talk about it? And can you say when you're concerned?
I understand the fear of not wanting to be a relationship that you see, like that being your fear of like, oh my God, they're in something that's toxic and they have kids and it's all this thing. But like, people don't change, I don't think, too much when when you get married to them. Like they are that person. So if you got something that's icky to you now, it's going to be icky to you later probably. But like if you're not seeing those like immediate or things, this person has been with this person for a long time. If you don't see things that make you scared for the future, for with kids it's probably not really there.
Yeah. And that it's like to recognize that it's fear. I heard something recently. I don't know and I've been noodling on this. I'll share this with you. Someone said your first fight is the same fight you'll have the rest of your life. And that goes along the lines of that there are like 10, this is out of the research of John Gottman, there are 10 unsolvable problems in any relationship. You just need to live with some of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
If there's warning signs, if you can't talk about it, that's a real warning sign. If there's a lot of defensive,ness or if there's not some of that, then there's something to worry about. But this sounds like it's not that.
No, it sounds very secure to me. So just, continuing your therapy and talking to them.
And also bring your partner to your therapist and talk about your fears with them. So
therapy as a couple, and you know this, is like so scrutinized by like a lot of men. And I don't know why that is. I feel like it's like an emotional dive that they maybe don't want to do, but they act like, I'm not going to therapy. You know how many people I've heard say that? Like men.
I know,
I'm not going to therapy. It's like, dude, you'd be the one that would benefit the most, you freaking weirdo. It's like, oh, you're so cool that you're, manly. And it's like, no,
do you know that most of the time the people that reach out to us are men?
See, but us in secret, they'd never probably.
I know they, and I think the other thing is men do feel like they're at a disadvantage. Here's a little tip. There's a little bit of research. No matter the gender of the therapist, if the therapist is warm toward the male, he'll increase his warmth in a heterosexual relationship 1.3 times to his female partner. If the therapist is cold toward the partner, he will decrease it 1.3 times. So the thing is, therapist warmth toward the male, because men come into therapy feeling at a disadvantage. If the therapist is warm, and there's lots of indicators of warmth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
Oh, that is really fascinating.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that your therapist is going to be warm to your partner, and in a heterosexual couple.
Holy crap.
Okay. I feel like we've been so heteronormative, and I'm uncomfortable about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Is there something you want to share about a heteronormative relationship that would be a tool for somebody? I know. And I think it's because a lot of my write-ins were from heteronormative relationships, just from what I can read of them, and like me being a female and a male as I read them.
Yeah.
But I remember something that you told us.
What?
It was about, this was sexual related, but like there was with intimacy, heteronormative relationships are much less balanced than a non-heteronormative relationship, which is just crazy. I just remember you saying that on our last episode because
that's
I was like,
true. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that there's other confounding factors with I guess non-traditional couples coming out sometimes is traumatic. There's other kinds of, it's too bad we didn't have a chance to talk about them, but
there is, I have a familiar relationship, of someone I know just in general. I'm not going to give away too much, but they are non-heteronormative and, they are seeking therapy, and they're actually going through a breakup right now.
Yeah.
And part of the problem was that they were trauma bonded together as their first coming out of, this is who we are, we're gay relationship. And it actually became that they were so trauma bonded that the sexual relationship became nothing.
Yeah.
Like it just became non-existent. Because of the way that they were bonded, which is crazy because they loved each other so deep, but it removed that
right.
piece
They
of
just
it.
sort of desexualized.
Yes.
That. It became non-romantic.
Yes.
It sounds like, that can happen sometimes.
Yeah. And so you've seen that before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more, crew. Call SYD number, I think this is 4, relationship anxiety. Hey, SYD, I'm in college and currently have the greatest boyfriend who treats me better than any guy ever has, and I genuinely see a future with him. However, sometimes when he goes out to the bars with friends, I can't help but get anxious sometimes that he is going to talk to other girls, even though I know deep down he would never cheat on me or anything. I think it may be childhood trauma as my dad cheated my mom, but sometimes I feel like something is wrong with me as I struggle to understand my emotions. Any advice? Is this normal?
Oh, man. And I feel for that person. They're really on it, and they know it's it's related to dad.
It's coming from something.
Yeah, it's coming from something. And so I would say to work on that and then talk to their partner about it and to be able to say, this is a raw spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I saw, what happens with love. And of course I feel that way.
I know. And college is tough. I mean, you're never in any other circumstance of life are you going to the bars with people that are the exact same age as you, all kind of like going through this like sexual discoveries, mostly, I should say, not all, but like time in their life. Like, people are curious and they're like, I felt like a lot of people were looking for like relationships or hookups or anything like that. It was just a very weird dynamic, especially when you mix liquor.
Yeah.
So I understand the discomfort. I don't think that that's wild, to be honest. It's a very weird time of life. I just keep thinking that in my head. I'm like, oh, it's a weird time.
It's a weird time of life. Well, you're sort of growing up and you're doing a lot of experimenting. And you know what? You do a lot of
experimenting. That's the word I wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just remember that your brain is not fully developed until you're 25.
Yeah.
So you're
I'm finally fully baked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the frontal lobe is not complete. So you don't have that executive function online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's complicated.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
But I think knowing where the source of the problem is really healing. And I think that remembering that's why and communicating that.
And talking to your partner about it and saying like, in these moments, I need support. And then if that partner is responsive, you're golden.
You're golden.
Yeah. Yeah.
But be mindful, like, am I seeing him for everything that there is right there? Or am I seeing like a relationship that I really want? Because I think that's what I fell into is like, no, it's amazing. Like, this is so good. But I was actually covering up for things and I was feeling insecure because there were things to feel insecure about. But I wanted a relationship and I wanted it to be good so bad that I told myself there was nothing wrong. Like, I really could see a future with this person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just would challenge you in the other way of like, is there anything there that would make you actually insecure?
Yes. And that's a really good question. Like, what is it that you're seeing, or are you avoiding something? Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Last one. Chores and living with my boyfriend. Fellow Minnesota girly here. I have been living with my boyfriend for 2.5 years. Everything has gone really well. We have a dog together now, talking about marriage soon, and we love each other's company. The only thing that really makes it difficult is the chore load that I carry compared to him. I feel like I'm the only one that has been cleaning/tidying up. I was sick with COVID last week and bedridden, and the apartment got really messy and disorganized. No one vacuumed our dog hair. Dishes piled up next to the sink. No laundry was taken care of. I have brought it up several times that I would love more help around the house, but he said that he does not like to do it when I ask because he feels too much pressure and feels like I'm nagging him. Mm-hmm. But if I don't ask for help, then it doesn't get done. How do I approach the issue without starting a fight and making it more 50-50? Am I just too type A? Thank you.
This is a really good example of the pursue withdraw cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't feel like he's there for her. And so what's in the way?
Yeah.
What's going on with him? What is it like? Oh, I feel too much pressure. You're nagging me. So listen, if he's like, I don't like to clean, but I'll do this, then they can be explicit about it and they can make it, but they need to have a conversation about it.
You can't just be like, I'm not doing that. And then expect it to get done. That feels so gross.
Right. It's not, if it matters to her, it needs to matter to him. And if he doesn't want to do it, great. Let's just say, I don't want to do it. Will you just do the cleaning and I'll do something else? And then they can solve their problems. But it sounds like this business of I don't like to be nagged is kind of like a defense.
I've also heard of the like, they don't want to do it or they don't feel like they need to because maybe they're the ones supporting the relationship financially more. I've heard that one a lot
Well,
too.
and it's like, okay, fine. People have lots of arrangements around that sort of thing.
If it works for you, it works.
It definitely does. And that's yeah.
It's another way to go about it. I mean, Jordan and I, like, he does not do dishes. Like, it grosses him out. It doesn't gross me out. It's like, he actually like has like a gag. Like he like,
oh my goodness.
Gets so grossed out by food on a plate that's wet.
Yeah.
Like he just like gets disgusted.
Yeah.
She shovels. I've never touched a snowblower or the shovel.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing
That's
is
totally
that works for you.
Yeah.
I was a stay-at-home mom for a while.
Yeah.
So I did all the laundry and I did all the dishes and stuff. Then when I went back to work, I don't touch the laundry. And if I do, I get in trouble for my husband because he's an amazing stain remover.
Oh my God.
And I used to do, and when I'm at work because I come home at like 6:30, he does the meals. He does them for me. So it's sort of
beautiful.
like, if you can have the flexibility around that, it's like, it doesn't have to be equal, but just own your part. And so, but it's
like
sort of
that
like,
part.
own what you want to do. And it's cool if he doesn't want to do it, then, but maybe he needs to do a minimal amount. If she's sick and she's able to say like, it really matters to me to have it clean.
Yeah.
Maybe he's saying it's never good enough for her. I mean, we need to know what's really going on.
Yeah.
And so they need to talk about it. And if they can't, then they need some therapy.
Yep. Because it sounds like that would be the next step for that. And it can be beautiful in so many ways, a relationship, and then have one underlying issue, I think I've seen, just that is causing so much turmoil, like as simple as cleaning.
But I think again, remember that there's the cleaning, which is the content, but there's something else going on.
Yeah.
So when he tells her, I'm nagging you, maybe he doesn't feel like, what's going on with him? Does he not feel good enough? Does he not feel like it's good enough for her? Does he always feel like he's failing her?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe her standards are like, it needs to be immaculate. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. Maybe it needs to be immaculate or something like that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
or maybe she just wants help and she's not giving it.
Yeah.
And because he's tired, or like he feels worn out, or he feels like I've heard someone say this before of like, well, your job is easier than mine. So it's like, you should, like this weird, like,
or it's like, you're the woman. I mean, who knows, like what it is. Yeah. Yeah. We don't know.
It's worth discovering and looking into. Yeah. Thank you for this conversation.
This was
was
fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the direction of Well Said is helping people and having conversations and access to information and like learning. And that's like what this podcast is for. And to be able to give people an inside scoop on like you said, therapy, like 101 is so helpful. And I feel things that I take away as I'm listening. And that's how I know it's a good episode. It's like, I'm like, oh, I'm gathering information. I know my people are going to like this.
That's
so
great.
Thank you for all of this.
Yeah. It was
and we'll
really
have to
fun.
do a mini Jordan and Sid therapy as like an example.
We'll do a little example of emotionally focused
it'd be
therapy.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool. Where can people find you? Where can they come see you? Maybe if they're in Minnesota and they want to come see you.
Okay. So I have a clinic and it's called Evolve Therapy and it's in Minnesota. We also do teletherapy. So it's online. We do. Yeah. So people, if they're in the greater area of Minnesota, we can only see Minnesota folks because we're only licensed in Minnesota. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Instagram. It's at Evolve Therapy MN.
Perfect.
And then on X, I guess is what they're calling it now.
Twitter. Whoops.
Twitter. Yeah. Twitter. That's the same thing. And also we're on Threads under the same thing. Evolve Therapy MN.
Love it.
And you can see, and we have we do like Wednesday wisdom, or we'll do relationship advice, or we'll do like little things.
I love that.
So that we'll give little bits of advice, always under the guise of emotionally focused therapy, which was started by Dr. Sue Johnson, and it's research based.
That's amazing.
So again, just to tie back to the beginning, the love languages. How do you feel about the love languages now, Sid?
They're not deep enough for me. They feel like a surface level Band-Aid to like giving and not going any deeper to understand the person's needs. That's what it feels like to me.
Right. Exactly. So that's exactly right. Because it's much deeper than that. And again, they're so weaponized. Like, so
quality time to me now means like they need, people need to feel together. For me personally, it's like because I felt abandonment at one point in my life.
Exactly.
Or like not, not cared for or something, or you know what I mean? Like, and I can pinpoint, I'm not going to go into detail obviously, but like, I can like think of things that are like, oh wow, that might be what was happening.
So these are your attachment needs, which is like, now you're understanding them, which is such a great example. Like it's like a little, like really, really.
I'm like, oh, and words, because I've been harmed by words before.
Right.
I've felt like I couldn't do enough to get like, I'm really proud of you or like something like that.
Yeah.
So I've always felt like I had to overachieve
to get the words.
To get words. So that's like how I am as a person, which is something I'm also dealing with.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, why words show up as like what I would quote unquote need from love languages. But it's so much deeper than that.
Right.
And just saying like, I'm a words of affirmation person.
And you need to just give it, and you just need to give it to me.
And so give it to me like that.
Right.
It's
Give
like,
it to me.
no.
But then it doesn't involve what the other person's feeling, and it's not reciprocal or
Exactly.
whatever. So much deeper than that. Thank
Much
you for
deeper.
having me.
Thank you for being here.
I really
know
appreciate it. We had fun.
we had a lot of fun and we ran long, but it's beautiful. And I hope that you've gotten something out of this podcast, you guys, because it is so special. At Well Said Podcast on Instagram, there's a period between Well Said period podcast, but anyway, you'll find it. I'm Well Said Sid now. So find me on Instagram there, across all channels. If you could please go subscribe to YouTube, it helps me a ton. So just your subscription, it takes you like maybe 2 seconds. You can go to my link in bio to find it. It's huge for me. So I'd love it, love if you could. And we will have Renee back because this is too good of a conversation not to. So
that's great.
I appreciate you all. Have a lovely evening or morning, I guess, whenever you're listening to this. And I appreciate you listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.